Hey guys, welcome back for another episode of Not the Girl Next Door. I'm your host, Meg Reynolds, and as you can see if you're watching this on Spotify or YouTube, we're not in the studio. We are back in Central Park in New York. It's been about 6 months since I've done my last Central Park episode where I was here for a week for work, and I thought it was time. One, it's kind of fitting because not only is it 6 months since then, but it's approaching 2 years since I have been laid off. By the time this episode airs, it's like pretty much 2 years exactly since I was laid off, and 6 years since I graduated college. And it feels very fitting and maybe a little ironic or poetic, whatever you want to call it, that I'm back in Central Park for this episode. Because as you guys know, I have been talking so much this season about being 27, having these really big questions and feelings and emotions, and just a lot is changing. Like so much has stayed the same and so much is changing at the exact same time. And it's just a really weird spot to be in. And I'm assuming this is how most people feel in their late 20s. And yeah, it feels very, very fitting to be doing this episode. And so I thought I would give an update because if you didn't listen to that last Central Park episode, basically I talked about how this was the first time I was in New York and didn't feel this like sense of urgency to get back out. And I was like, oh, I kind of missed this. And I said, maybe I'll start trying to split my time with New York. Well, fast forward 6 months and I'm keeping that promise to myself. I'm keeping the promise of splitting my time with New York. Do I have a clear plan of what this is going to look like? No, I don't at all. There's a lot of I don't knows here. And that's kind of the theme of today's episode is one big fat I don't know. That's kind of the motto of 27 is whimsy and a whole bunch of I don't knows. And I actually had therapy on Monday and I got a lot of clarity on all of these things that I'm feeling and et cetera. So I figured what better time to talk about it than this episode. Where does all this leave me? Where do all these questions, I don't know, this has been the most disorienting. It's really disorienting to be feeling like this. And for anyone else who's out there who's feeling pulled in a million different directions and there's so much you want to achieve and accomplish and you're starting it, but it just feels like the more you do, the more you want to do, if that makes sense. So that's incredibly disorienting, but it's also, there's something really exciting and exhilarating about that. And so that kind of is where I want to start this episode. Like I said, this has been a really mentally challenging thing to be experiencing. You know, I keep calling it an identity crisis. I keep saying, I feel like I'm having an identity crisis, even though for the first time in my life, I feel like I've never felt more aligned with who I am. And so obviously those are two very conflicting feelings, right? And when I was in therapy the other day, she kind of was like, well, I want to reframe this for you because she's like, you need to stop calling it a crisis. You're not in a state of crisis. You're in a state of questioning. And when she put it like that, it makes a whole lot more sense because obviously that's what has been the journey of the podcast. And it's been the journey of, especially the past 2 years, is questioning everything. And I've even said, and so how many episodes have I said, guys, that in life, we should question everything. We shouldn't just go the path that we're expected, and we should just constantly be questioning. Well, my own words are biting me in the ass because here we are. The questioning has led me to feeling like it's an identity crisis, but it's not. How exciting is it to be able to have questions still to figure out and pieces of myself that I need to keep exploring? And that's kind of the way you need to look at it. With all these questions that we may have in our late 20s, something that comes up with is a lot of insecurities, right? Insecurity of not being good enough, for women especially, insecurities about our bodies, about, the fact that we're married or unmarried, don't have children yet, like all these things of insecurities. But when it comes to insecurity, I need everybody listening to stop looking at it like it's a moral failing. Having insecurities is one of the most normal human experiences ever. Like anybody who says they're not insecure about anything is a big fat fucking liar. Okay, we all have insecurities. The difference is the people who are able to work through their insecurities are the ones that are able to admit their insecurities to themselves and to others. And that's where a big piece of accountability comes in. But all that to say, insecurity itself is not a moral failing. Insecurity becomes a moral failing when it becomes a pattern of behavior and it becomes your character. Because let's be real, insecurity, it makes us do some crazy shit. It makes us act like a pick-me sometimes. It happens, all right? Nobody is perfect. But it's the moral failing when it becomes a pattern of behavior. Prime example, we're watching it unfold. Yes, I am still talking about it. Bravo's very own Amanda Batula and Wes Wilson. I wonder if they'll run into them while recording this episode. But those are two people who are extremely insecure. And the thing about insecure people like that is they do tend to gravitate towards each other because, let's be real, misery loves company. They validate each other. Whereas Sierra, we've heard her talk about her insecurities. We've seen them manifest. However, she is able to work through them. They are not a character trait of hers. They are not a pattern of behavior for her. For Wes and Amanda, their insecurities have become who they are. And that is why being able to question, being able to hold yourself accountable, being able to be so introspective with yourself is really important. And it takes you out of your own, it does take you out of your own world and bubble a little bit. And I just don't think, I have a lot of insecurities too about my weight, about my body. I've been very vocal about those, about where I'm going in life. What am I going to do with my career? Again, answering the questions of what the fuck am I doing in New York? And, how am I going to split my time here? Like, what is the point of it all? And again, it's a big fat, I don't know. And it's okay that I don't know. And I think for the past 2 years, I've been, in survival mode, right? I got laid off 2 years ago, and it's been me just trying to figure it out as I go. But the thing that I didn't even realize that I was doing at the time that now I'm able to consciously say is that I've been embracing this like non-linear career path, these portfolio careers. And I think for a lot of women, the 9 to 5, obviously we know the 9 to 5 job does not support a woman's hormones, a woman's lifestyle. Like it just doesn't. And when you are able to embrace, denying yourself a 9 to 5 does not mean you are not an ambitious person. I would argue the opposite, because for so long, 9 to 5, the only sense of ambition people had was climbing the career ladder of a 9 to 5. Now we know ambition can look so many different ways and take so many different forms. And I think it shows that you're even more ambitious of a person when you make the cognizant choice to step outside the framework that has been already set for you. What was this epiphany that I had in therapy, and why do I feel the need to make it today's episode? Well, I had the epiphany that, growing up, I lived in fear of disappointing people. I was a people pleaser. This is not new information, right? My parents were very supportive, but I lived in a state of fear of disappointing them. As I got older, that fear became disappointing friends. It became disappointing colleagues, professors, boyfriends. It was always external. For some reason, I was never worried about disappointing myself, which I think is interesting and really ties into how things are for me now, because, now I work for myself and there's nothing certain about my life anymore. And it's led to this state of questioning and also this state of just longing for the answers that I used to have, longing for not the path that I used to have, but the answers on the path. Because let's be real, I'm not grieving the life that I thought I wanted because I know I don't want it. I know that it wouldn't have been right for me and I would have made a mistake by choosing that path. I don't miss my ex. I don't miss the 9 to 5. I don't miss any of that. So that's not where this grief and this longing is coming from. It's coming from the certainty that came with that path. It came from the certainty of that 5-year plan. It's coming from all that because as much as I've released myself from that for the past 2 years and allowed myself to just thrive and go with the flow, something that I've never done before, now it's like, okay, I need to sit and think about what is next and where am I going? And again, it's okay if it leads to more questions about what I want. It's okay if I don't have all the answers and still the answer is I don't know. But the longing was the feeling that I've been going for all along. And when my therapist said that, it was just like a big epiphany and almost kind of like a weight lift. When you have an epiphany in therapy, you're like, oh my God, you feel instantly lighter because it just is like a light bulb came on. And the thing is now that I'm doing this on my own, as much as I never thought about disappointing myself, now the only person I can disappoint is me. That's it. I'm the only person to disappoint. And that's really an unnerving place because it's like, well, what would that look like? What would disappointing myself look like? Is it not reaching my goals or not even trying to reach my goals? Is it the times when I say I'm going to do something and I don't keep that promise to myself? Like, what does disappointing yourself even look like? And I think most people have never even considered that fact of, oh, I'm the only person that needs. And it's so funny because I've said this before, right? Like I've said before a million times over that we need to define what success looks like for ourselves, and no one else can tell us that. And all of those things, I've said that a million times. And it's like now my own words are biting me in the ass because I'm here. You know, my whole life I was using other people as a barometer for my own success, and I can't do that anymore. There's no clear path anymore. There's no one to compete against per se, or there's just, it's not written in stone anymore. And as exciting as that is, it's unnerving because, again, it's one big fat I don't know. The thing is, I'm finally slowing down enough in my own life to like let these feelings bubble to the surface and have these questions and just really explore these parts of myself. I've never slowed down like this. You know, I'm really prioritizing being able to take less gigs these days and focus on myself creatively. Again, part of what I want to do, I think, here in New York is not even necessarily just book gigs. Like, yes, would love to be booking gigs here in New York, but I do think that there's an element of me wanting to just use this as a creative outlet, a creative escape, a creative retreat, if you will. And I feel really lucky to have the ability to do that and the flexibility in my life to do that, to be able to get away. You know, like I come here and just record a podcast, see friends, focus on writing for once, focus on the things of myself that I've been putting off because everybody always comes first in my life. And I think if you're somebody in your late 20s who's really struggling with this, I think you may just need something like that for yourself. It doesn't have to be is splitting time between your home base and New York. It doesn't have to be something that extreme, but something that is for yourself where you're able to slow down and breathe is so important. And it literally just feels like a breath of fresh air, honestly, to be here and just get away from the noise for a second. Like I can't even tell you guys how many shoots I have been asked to do for today and tomorrow since I've been in New York, and like even leading up to New York, I got like, it always seems like that, right? As soon as you're about to leave town, so many opportunities pop up and you're like, fuck, should I have not taken this time for myself? And the answer is yes, you should always take this time for yourself. Don't cancel, unless it's, again, maybe if it's like a life-changing opportunity that you feel really called to cancel your self-care time for, like don't protect your peace. It is so easy to let yourself fall to the back burner and put everything and everyone first, especially when, you know, we've got things like bills to pay, and, you know, money doesn't just appear out of fucking thin air as much as we would all love it to. Like, not all of us can have a sugar daddy, but I think, you know, being able to do that is what is going to allow me to be more focused in my career and really answer the question of what do I truly want? And that's where this whole longing thing comes in, because it's not even just about longing for answers. It's about longing, you know, for a romantic relationship. It's about longing to have more time. Time is something I have been so hyper fixated on this year, like feeling like I'm running out of time and acting like I'm literally about to kick the bucket tomorrow. But the thing, and I'm not even gonna utter the sentence that I thought of, but, you know, nothing is guaranteed. And so all I wanna do is just live and feel fulfilled. And, you know, now that I have this well-rounded life, it is very easy to hyperfixate and long for the romantic love. But, you know, for some reason, this longing, it's like this urge to skip to the end of the book and just know what happens. Like, I don't know if anybody else used to do this. I used to do this all the time, where when I would start a book, this is actually such a great metaphor of my life. Oh my God. Wow. Okay. So I used to do this thing where when I would start a book, I would skip to the end and just read like the last 2 or 3 pages of the book. And then I would go and start from the beginning, knowing already how the book ends. And that is, wow, really defining of my character and my need to know things and my need to have the answers. God damn. I need to send that to my therapist. But the thing is, like, and my therapist said this to me when we were in session and we're talking about all this, and she was like, you're gonna hate me for saying this. And of course, you know, when your therapist says you're gonna hate them for saying something, you automatically do. And she goes, I kind of love this for you. And I was like, Jenna, what the fuck? what do you mean you love this big identity crisis that I'm in? She's like, well, one, again, you're not in an identity crisis. She was like, two, but she was like, I love this for you because for the first time in your life, you are letting yourself slow down. You're at a point where not only do you already know yourself, but you're discovering yourself and allowing yourself to change at the same time. And she was like, that's a really special place to be. And I was like, you know what? You're right. Like, it is so special to be, for the first time in my life, so sure of who I am and still discovering things about myself and allowing those parts of myself to unfold and to evolve over time. I don't need to have all the answers as much as I want them. And yes, I want to start sitting and thinking about where it is I want to go next and what I want the next 5 years of my life to look like, and really start to answer some of these questions, but also recognizing that I don't need to hold myself to those things and I can allow them to change. And it's all, again, I know all of this is probably like a broken record, and these are all things that I have said to you guys, but it's gotten to the point where now I can no longer like run from that part of myself. And like, I am able to just be and have these thoughts on my own. You know, I said to my therapist too, I was like, I feel like the past 2 years have been me finally getting comfortable with myself. And then it's just like another identity crisis. And I was like, is this what your 20s are? One big, long identity crisis? And she was just like, yeah, pretty much. And it's like, so if you're feeling like this, you're not alone. Your 20s suck. Your 20s fucking suck, but they can also be really special and great if you let them be. But I think that's why everyone says, oh, your 30s are the new 20s, because when you get to 30, your brain is developed, you know who you are theoretically, and you are able to have adult money, theoretically. And once you get to your 30s, like, that's when you feel the most secure and confident in who you are. Like when I was in therapy the other day, my therapist said, you know, people love to ask the question, if you could go back to any age, what age would you go back to? And she's in her early 40s at this point. She goes, I would go back to 33. She goes, nothing spectacular happened at 33. She was like, but I just remember feeling so sure and so confident in myself. I felt I looked the best. I felt the best. I was the happiest. She was like, nothing particularly special about that age other than my relationship with myself. And that gives me such hope because, again, I'm 27, like 30's approaching, and it's that, oh my God, scary. But also not scary, kind of exciting to get older. But how special is it that I get to wake up every day and have choices to still make? And so if you're somebody that's feeling lost and you're feeling like you don't know what to do with yourself, I really hope that you can reframe your mind around that, because how special is it that you get to wake up and still make choices about your day, still make choices about yourself and what it is you want to do, still have things to explore about yourself. And even if you are set in your career and you have your routines down, all that stuff, how special is it that you get to wake up and you can one day, if it's no longer fitting you, you can decide to change things and you can decide, you know what, this life no longer suits me. How special is it to have that choice? Having the ability to choose is special, and it's something that women didn't always have. You know, I had a podcast clip going viral talking about how, you know, I said like our ancestors didn't fight for our rights for us to sit home and wait for Brad to text us. And the amount of comments in that comment section that are so beautiful of women talking about all the choices they make for themselves. Some women choosing to have children on their own because they so badly want to be a mom. Some women choosing to, you know, travel the world and do that thing. Like, every woman making different choices for herself. No one's path is aligned. And it's so beautiful to see in that comment section all of the women who have felt empowered to make their own choice. And that's what it's about. And so as much as I have this feeling of longing and feeling like I need to know the answers, I'm okay with the not knowing for right now. I may crash out and have an identity crisis, you know, when my period comes along, as we all do. Love that for us. But you know, that's such a different thing. You know, over time, I used to wear my trauma like it was a bunch of coats. Like, you know, that scene in Friends when Joey comes in and he's wearing all of Chandler's clothes and he's like, look at me, I have all these clothes. That's how I feel like I've shed my trauma over the years. And now that it's all off, there was a spider on me. Now that it's all off and there's a squirrel staring at me. Bro, you want to fight? And now that all those layers are off and it's like revealed who I am underneath, I think that's where almost the longing comes back into, because it's like, that was my protection for the longest time. That is what gave me answers. That is what powered me through. And now that I feel lighter and I have all these questions that need answering, it's like, it's very unnerving, and it's an unnerving place to be in. But it's also exhilarating at the same time, because no longer do I feel like it's weighing me down. And here's the thing, if you sit with these questions long enough, if you sit with your feelings long enough, the answers will they'll kind of come to you. They'll kind of speak for themselves. Like after I did that New York episode, and I was really sitting there thinking like, wow, I kind of miss this. And wow, like I kind of wish I could be here more often. What could that look like? And I started really just leaning into myself and these feelings. Here we are. Here's what's turned out is I said, I don't really have a clear plan, but I know I have a place to stay and I have opportunity here. So why am I not going to take it? And so I went. And I've never been somebody like that. I've never been someone who's like, there is not a fully thought out plan. I'm not going. Like, I'm flying by the seat of my pants on this one. And it's a really unnerving place to be. But I think if I learned anything from getting laid off, it's that nothing is guaranteed. I thought my position at that company was pretty much guaranteed. I was the only person doing my job. I was the only one on my team here in Nashville. Like, I really thought I was safe. My bosses thought I was safe. And then I wasn't. Just in the blink of an eye, 4 years of work down the drain, and I was left without a plan. And I had to figure it out really quickly. Like, if you're new here, I got laid off, and a month later I started touring. And I completely changed my life virtually, literally in a month. And so that's what is nothing is guaranteed. Your opportunities are never guaranteed. Your life is never guaranteed. So why would you not just lean into whatever it is you're feeling called to do? Because before I got laid off, I remember having the same feelings I was having, where there was this like anxiety bubbling up, and I was just feeling really unsettled in myself. And I couldn't put a pin on what that feeling was. And I did eventually figure out it was something with my job and my career. And I literally said to myself, okay, in 1 year, I think I want to try and go freelance. Like, I don't know what's next, but I know I need something to be next. And then literally like got laid off and had to figure it out in a month. And we did. And now I feel a lot more settled. And then with splitting time with New York, these feelings started bubbling up again, of that feeling of being unsettled. And I sat with it long enough, and it was like, okay, I don't really want to fully move back. That's not what I'm feeling, but I also know I want to be here more. And so we're figuring out how to make it work. And I know all of this sounds so simple and so much easier said than done. And if you're sitting here listening to this, you're probably like, Meg, but I have this, I have my job, I have my dog, I have my kids, my boyfriend, my this, my that, my other, a million things. So do I. The thing is, you can sit there and make a million excuses for yourself as to why you can't do the thing it is you want to do. There's always going to be a reason not to do something. There's always going to be a reason why you shouldn't take a chance or why you can't take a chance. But the thing is, you're the only person you need permission from to be able to do something that you want to do. You're the only person that has to give yourself permission, and you're the only person that you have to answer to. Granted, yes, if you're in a relationship, you answer to your husband, boyfriend, whatever, it's a little different. But if you're untied like me, I'm the only person I have to answer to. And there's, again, a million reasons as to why oh my God, I could miss out on shoots. I can miss out on opportunities. Like, you can always talk yourself out of something, but stop doing that. Start talking yourself into it. Really lean into the feeling of lean into your convictions and lean into the trust that you have with yourself. And that's what's the most important thing of all. And I think I'm wondering too, if the feelings that I'm having now are why I've been so nostalgic for my childhood and so nostalgic for the past, because that's when I felt the most, I was able to not only lean into myself as much as I was an anxiety-riddled child, like that's when I didn't deny myself things, right? Like, there's so much from my childhood I wish I didn't get rid of, like old journals and old sketchbooks and, craft things, just pieces of myself that I think over the years I developed shame about and felt the need to hide because they were lame or uncool. And, now I'm really into needlepoint. I fucking tell everybody about needlepoint. I love that shit. It is so calming and good for my anxiety. And I tell everybody about the book that I'm writing. Have I gotten much work done on it? No. That's part of what I'm here in New York for, is to give myself time to write and really flesh out the ideas. But someone gave me this piece of advice the other day, and her name is Sadie Kay, and she is a phenomenal creative director. And we actually ran into each other at the airport. And we were talking about, I was saying all these things that I'm saying to you guys now. I was literally on my way to New York. And she was like, just put creative director on your portfolio. And she was like, and then just do it. I was like, you're so right. She was like, just say that you are something. And this is the thing, just say that you're something and then start doing that thing. If you want to say you're a writer, say that you're a writer and then start writing. If you want to say you're an artist, say you're an artist and then start painting or creating music, whatever your art is. Like, put that, give yourself that title, give yourself permission to do it, and then just fucking do it. Like, again, nothing is guaranteed in life. And I don't, I really love that we're in this era too, where people are talking about how you shouldn't be afraid to be cringe. I think there's a little bit of posturing with that, where it is a bit of bravado and like almost trying to gaslight themselves into doing something, if that makes sense. And people do still call people lame and make fun, and there's always gonna be people like that. But I really love how we are in an era where people are giving themselves permission to be seen and heard. And I think that is such a special and beautiful thing. I know it took, and I almost wonder too, with me wanting to be a writer, if the podcast was like almost a way for the longest time of me being able to bridge that gap with myself. And it kind of makes sense in a way that it was. Because here's the thing about creating something or anything in life, you can always edit something shitty. You can always edit shitty writing. You can always edit a bad piece of art. You can always fix bad music. You can always fix and change and tweak and do all those things. But you can't fix something that's blank. You can't change something that's not there. So if you're not creating your art and putting it into the world for you to even work on it and fix it, what are we doing here? Like, you can edit shitty writing, you can't edit a blank page. And I have to hold on to that. And something else too that I'm holding on to is I'm the youngest I'll ever, I said this in an episode a couple weeks ago that I've written this in my journal, and I keep coming back to it, that not only am I the youngest I'll ever be again, but I'm also the oldest I've ever been. And there's something really beautiful at that. I know the most about myself and the world that I have ever known in my entire life, and yet I still have so much to learn. And I think that's something that's really special about where I'm at in this point in my life and where I'm at currently. I hope this can make somebody who is listening feel a little bit better about their current situation, and if they're having a lot of these like questions and crises and they just feel like they have the answers to nothing. I hope this made you feel just the slightest bit better. If you asked younger Meg if she would ever move to Manhattan, the answer would have been a big fat no. I would have said there's no way in hell. Well, now I'm splitting my time, and I'm kind of, like I said, I've been looking for what should my 3-year, 5-year plan be? And I think those plans will be involving New York and coming back here, which is a really crazy place to be. And as I've been thinking about all this past week and just really doing some soul searching and kind of taking this time for myself, I kind of have reflected back on not just the past 10 years, but the past 10 versions of myself. Because let's be real, every year we're growing and changing. I firmly believe that. And so I kind of wrote down a piece of advice for every single version of myself from 17 all the way to 27, because in the past 10 years, I've gone to college, gotten my heart broken, not once, but twice, moved away from the place that I grew up in, and now have found myself wanting to come back to it. I've lost friends, made friends, gotten my heart broken a couple more times. Like, there's traveled all over the world, built a business and a career I never thought I would have, and just so much has changed. And I think back to the high school and college version of myself and how sure of herself she was at each and every time, but there was still that underlying insecurity. And so these pieces of advice are what I think I would have needed to hear at every single one of those ages. And so I wanted to share with you guys, because maybe you're someone who's listening who's about to graduate college. Maybe you're someone who's listening who is debating whether or not they should make this next big move. Like, whatever this thing that is on your heart right now, I feel like maybe this will help you out. So 17 is kind of a two-parter, but my 17-year-old self needed to hear that your thoughts are not who you are. They're like the clouds and you're the sun. So you're not who you think you are or who you're going to be, and that's more than okay. And the reason I think I needed to hear this at that age is because I was still really struggling with depression, and also, like, at the same time, weirdly was so sure of what I thought my life was going to be, and none of it came to fruition, and that's okay. And the reason I say your thoughts are like the clouds is because what do clouds do to the sun? They hide it. They fog it up. And that's what your thoughts can sometimes do to you, is they just make you think things about yourself that are absolutely not true. And so sometimes you need to remember your thoughts aren't who you actually are. They only become who you actually are when you internalize them. Sometimes thoughts need to be fleeting, just like the clouds, and they just pass right over the sun. So at 18, what I needed to hear is that life is complicated and so are people. You shouldn't be spending so much of your time trying to decipher the things people don't even know about themselves. I wasted so much time and so many years trying to be what I thought other people needed and just figure out why they were treating me a certain way when really it had nothing to do with myself. And I think that's what my 18-year-old self needed to be hearing. At 19, I needed to hear that it's our parents' first time living too, and they don't have all the answers that we think they should. When I was 19, that's when my dad left. It's when my world turned upside down, and I spent the better part of the next decade trying to figure out and reconcile and just make sense of all the things that came to light that didn't make sense to me and really just shattered my perception of my parents, my childhood, and everything. And I had to come to the conclusion that my parents are still human. It's their first time living, and even though we idolize our parents, a lot of the times they're also still just overgrown children. At 20, I needed to hear that crazy is 9 out of 10 times actually a woman's intuition. Don't be afraid to raise your voice if it's what will get you heard. So often women are labeled as crazy and hysterical. This is a tale as old as time, when in actuality it's one of two things. It's our intuition telling us something, or it means that we're denying a certain part of ourselves. And I think as women, our intuition is so incredibly strong. I mean, think to yourself, when was the last time your gut feeling steered you wrong, or you were wrong about something? You could probably count the times on one hand. At 21, I needed to hear that college isn't an ending, it's just the beginning. And you know that saying, if you love something, then set it free. And if it comes back, it was meant to be yours. It really is true. College ending, I feel like a lot of people go through a crisis when college ends. But for me, I didn't so much. But I think the thing I really struggled with was the friendships that ended after college and just the grief that came along with those. And some of those friendships came back and some of them didn't. And so to anyone who's graduating college this May, I need you to remember that this is actually just probably the marker of the beginning of your story. And not even that, because think about it this way too, all of your favorite sitcoms started at 27 or later. How I Met Your Mother started at 27. Friends, I'm pretty sure Ross and Chandler were 27 when the show started. Sex and the City started at 32. So your life is far from over. Sometimes it's not even just beginning when you graduate college. You're going to probably go through 3 more identity crises. Your 20s are one big, long identity crisis, and maybe your 30s are when life really does begin. Maybe that's why everyone says your 30s are the new 20s. I think your 20s are meant to be a shit show so that your 30s you can be sure of yourself. At 22, what I needed to hear is there's love the feeling and there's love the action. And you need to learn to spot the difference before that love turns to pain. Obviously, you guys know 22 is when I met my ex, who was the catalyst for this podcast, and I was not able to reconcile the difference between love the action and love the feeling. I took the word I love you at face value, and in my mind, I thought it made everything else okay. And I'm really glad that I did have that relationship at such a young age, because I don't think I would have become the version of myself without it. And a grief that nobody talks about in your 20s is when you're the woman that everyone thought would get married first, and now you're probably going to be the last. I had a long-term college relationship. Everyone was like, I thought you guys were endgame. All my friends were all single. And then now here we are. Again, we're all in our late 20s now. I'm doing so many proposals and weddings, always a bridesmaid, never a bride. But I'm okay with that, because I think, and for any woman out there who is like this and going through this like me, I think what it means is that a relationship would have kept you from discovering certain parts of yourself. That's not to say that any woman out there who has gotten into a long-term healthy relationship that you're missing out on a part of yourself. That's not what I'm saying at all. But there's something about a woman who had a long-term relationship in her early 20s that she gets out of it and then discovers a lot of herself in that mid to late 20s era. And you become so sure of yourself, so confident in yourself, and you can really appreciate the time being single, because being single has truly been such a gift. Like I said, it's given me the freedom to do so many things that I wanted to do that I would not that I would have needed permission from a partner to do, but I wouldn't have given myself the permission to do it, because I would have felt like it means I'm choosing that over my partner. And I didn't understand that when I was younger. At 23, what I needed to hear is no one thinks about your body as much as you do. No one picks it apart like you. And in the words of Hilary Duff, you need to be stronger, not smaller. If I had a clock of all the hours, minutes, days that I have spent thinking about my body, I would probably be appalled at the amount of time I've wasted on that. And it makes you think of how much time you could have committed to bettering yourself in other ways and building something else, being creative, doing anything else with that time and with that mental energy. And so I think that's what I needed to hear when I was 24. At 25 is the year I got laid off. It was a big transformative year for me. And everyone says 25 is when shit starts to hit the fan for you. And it was so right in my case. So at 25, what I needed to hear was that anxiety in your chest. It's not anxiety, but sometimes intuition. And it's okay to follow it and choose a new path. Right before I got laid off, I was feeling so unsettled. I was feeling so unsettled in life and myself. I was questioning. I felt like I had hit my ceiling at my job. And I was just like, I don't know what's next, but I know something needs to be next. I was like, I know I need to make a move now. I just don't know what that move is. And then before I knew it, I got laid off and my path unfolded right before my eyes. And I know to some people that may be like, well, Meg, it's not always that easy. And it's not. Life is never going to be that easy. But I think a lot of the times we also overcomplicate it for ourselves instead of just trusting ourselves. At 26, so literally just last year, what I needed to hear was growing into yourself is a beautiful but uncomfortable thing. Learn to sit with those feelings and still show up. And oftentimes what's right will not be comfortable, but you'll have to build that comfort. Everyone wants things so instantly nowadays. We don't give things time anymore. We don't give love time. We don't give ourselves time. Time is one of those things that we all seem to think we don't have enough of. And it's true, time is fleeting, but it's how you make the most of it. That's what matters. And I think that for a lot of us, we have more time than we think we do. And so if you're someone too, if you're about to graduate college or you just want to change, any change that you're doing, whether it's a career, whether you're moving cities, whatever it is, I want you to give yourself a year to figure it out. And I don't say a year of a bad attitude and be like, this isn't working. I don't want a year of half-assed. Give yourself a year where you go all in, blind faith, just not questioning it and really leaning into it. And it's probably gonna feel really uncomfortable at first. There's gonna be a lot of challenges, a lot of struggles, especially if you're moving to a new city. But after a year, you should start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. You may not be fully settled, you may not feel completely comfortable, but you should be able to see the light. And if 1 year you're still miserable, you still aren't feeling it, that's when you can decide, do I want to keep giving this more time or do I want to switch paths? Neither is wrong, neither is an incorrect or bad thing. But I think too often because people don't give themselves enough time, that's why things fail before they even actually get started. And now at 27, the age I currently am, I've said this in a couple episodes now, but it really still rings true for me. And it's the thing that I need to remember most. And it's that I'm the oldest I've ever been and the youngest I'll ever be again. And time is going to keep passing either way. So I might as well spend it doing the things I always told myself that I couldn't do. Time is going to pass anyways, whether you like it or not. You could start that book now. You could start it in 3 more years. You can start pursuing that degree now. You could start it in another 3 years. Time is going to pass anyway. So why are you going to spend it doing things that you don't love? And that is what I need to remind myself in this chapter as I'm in this phase of questioning, in this phase of longing, trying to figure out what I want in my 5-year plan. But these past 10 years, these past 10 versions of myself, they've all been so different, yet at the same time, the one thing that they all have in common is the longing for love. That has been the theme of my life in all aspects, not just romantic, but love is something I constantly think about. And all those versions of myself needed love in some different capacity. Some only the recent versions have been able to give it to herself. And I'm really proud of that. You know, everything and everyone I've ever loved is what shaped me into being this person that I am today. And I'm able to walk through those memories as if they're a museum of my life. You know, it's my very own art gallery. And our memories, they really are like museums because they're keepers of our past. And because they're the keepers of our past, they leave clues of what our futures may hold. And, you know, they say history repeats itself, and our memories are proof of that. Because unless we learn from the past, we're going to keep repeating the same mistakes that we've always made. And coming back here to New York, I think for the longest time, the reason I hated Manhattan isn't because I hated the city itself, as I hated what it represented for me. It represented a lot of pain. It was a place of a lot of trauma. It just not even Manhattan, but just this state essentially. And Manhattan to me represented a future that didn't feel fully authentic and right to me because I didn't know I could shape it into something that I wanted. And now, giving myself this space and this time away for these past 6 years to grow, heal, learn things about myself, travel, all these things, it's given me the space, the freedom to choose New York, not just feel like this is the path that's expected of me. And I think for a lot of people, in the words of Hannah Montana, you can always find your way back home. So fucking true. But that's what I've done, is I'm finding my way back and reconciling two parts of myself. And that's what splitting my time represents. So I hope some of these pieces of advice kind of resonated with you guys and, maybe led you to think about your own life. So that is all for this week's episode of Not the Girl Next Door from Central Park Part 2. Make sure you leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening, and I'll see you next week for another episode. Bye for now.